Hey, Mark, I want to thank you and the DeMoss Group for sponsoring this, and Robert, it's good to be with you. And as I said, as Robert said, we're all friends here, but we have a fundamental disagreement. And I'm going to disagree very strongly on this point. The idea that you would have candidates' positions basically become irrelevant and that we adopt a doctrinal faith statement as to who the President of the United States is, I think can be very dangerous. Now, you put up, as an example, a Mitt Romney against Kay Bailey Hutchinson. Not really likely, both Republicans, so not likely, I'm just talking from a political sense. Let's give a more realistic example of the situation. Senator Obama wins the 2008 election. He is running for re-election in 2012, and the leader of the ticket for the Republican Party who accepts the nomination in 2012 in the summer is, in fact, Mitt Romney. And you said in Mitt Romney's case, he is pro-life, he's conservative on fiscal issues, he understands the jihadist threat. And let's say Barack Obama, during his 4 years in office, adopted policies and principles that accorded with his beliefs and values. Barack Obama's clearly stated unequivocally, after being asked many times and has written about it, that he is a Christian. I don't think that we take a litmus test of theology and say, well, Barack Obama says he's a Christian, therefore, even though Mitt Romney has a theological position I not only disagree with, which, by the way, I disagree with, personally. I do not agree with Mormon theology at all. I will not defend it. But the idea that his positions become irrelevant in this debate is, I think, exactly actually why the Founding Fathers, in Article 6 of the United States Constitution, specifically put in there, and I will read it. It says, the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. Now, that's significant in of itself, before you even get to the religious test, to support the Constitution of the United States. That is a requirement to serve in office, not something Congress just does, that to be the President of the United States, you have to swear or affirm to defend the Constitution of the United States and to support it. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office. I think the proposition that Robert's engaging in, with due respect, and we probably agree on theology, probably 100%. But to put forward a position where the position becomes not only secondary, but really irrelevant in the process, I think is dangerous. I think it's dangerous from a constitutional framework. I think it's dangerous, of course, on the social issues and the policy issues. I think it's dangerous for the position where the Supreme Court of the United States would be, if that's an issue that you're concerned with, which I tend to be concerned with that issue for, I will say, as Mark's giving disclaimers, for very biased reasons. I'm concerned about the direction of the Supreme Court because we do so much work there. And the president's lasting legacy is often the Supreme Court. So worldview matters, and theology, listen, I don't think it's irrelevant. The idea that faith is irrelevant, I think if you take your faith seriously, viewing the candidates' positions on faith is relevant. It's in the process of how you decide who you're going to support. I think it's a relevant aspect of looking at it. It's part of the lens you should look through. But to say, and I'll give another example, Jimmy Carter ran in 1976 as the born-again candidate. Now, his positions, and I could go through Roe versus Wade, I could go through now positions as it relates to the Middle East, you might find very disagreeable. But Robert, if Mitt Romney was running against Jimmy Carter, would you support Jimmy Carter? Because he's a born-again Christian. I find that premise to be troubling. In the list, and I also see this in the list, again, and I'm not supporting a theological position here, but when everybody gives a list of the religious groups, if they were Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim, you know, you shouldn't feel the same way. That's many pastors of goodwill are saying this. I understand that. They always leave out Jews. Now, coming from a Jewish heritage, I could say this. Why, when the litany is given, do we not include the Jewish community who rejects the divinity of Jesus Christ? Well, the answer sometimes is, well, they share the same Judeo-Christian heritage, or they share the same belief in God as Father. So there's theological argument, but they always leave out the Jewish community. Why is that? And I think it's left out because it shows you how dangerous this trend could be. If we have as a predicate, as the fundamental basis point in a discussion about the presidency of the United States, whose position they support based strictly on theology is dangerous. It's easy to say Kay Bailey Hutchinson and Mitt Romney. You can make, arguments here, both visibly conservative. Now, on the social issue is not the same, as Robert was honest to say. I would say in that case it would be easy for me because I do have a pro-life conviction. I am concerned about the nominees to the Supreme Court of the United States. I would rather see a Mitt Romney than a Kay Bailey Hutchinson, with no disrespect to Senator Hutchinson. And I would say the same thing is true with Governor Huckabee. I like Mike Huckabee. But Mike Huckabee's positions on a variety of issues for me personally were not something that I was comfortable with. Not that I disagreed with him philosophically, not that I didn't think he had the right to be, run for president of the United States, and he did a very effective job. But I looked at it as a position point. Positions matter. The lasting legacy of the president of the United States is not that they were, again with due respect, a member of First Baptist Dallas, or B'nai Israel down the street, or the Mormon Temple in Utah. The lasting legacy of a president is, in fact, the nominations they put forward to the Supreme Court, their views on foreign policy, their views on domestic issues, and I think it's extremely relevant. And I'll give another current, for instance, and then I will make sure I meet my time cues coming. Sarah Palin is now the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party. Much has been made about her faith and about her church, and I'm sure some of you have been writing about this. I think the idea that she's being criticized because she's Pentecostal in upbringing is absolutely dangerous. That's why we have no religious tests in the Constitution, no religious oath requirement, no specific religious doctrine have to be accepted before you serve. Now, I'm not going to say that it's irrelevant as to what she believes, but the idea that she'd be criticized for this, I think, is on the same vein of criticizing Mitt Romney because of his Mormonism. I understand the fundamental distrust of the evangelical church with Latter-day Saints. I understand it theologically. But if I have a candidate that's telling me, here are the kind of nominees that there are going to be to the Supreme Court, here's my position on Israel and the Middle East, here's my position on domestic and as now talking about economic situations, I sure think that's relevant. More relevant than the denomination. And I'd rather have Mitt Romney, if he were the nominee, which he's not, than someone that shared my theology but did not, in fact, have policies I wanted to see implemented. And I do think, and I know the comment you're referring to, we're electing a commander-in-chief, not a theologian-in-chief. Let me close with this. I actually think that statement's absolutely correct. We are not electing a theologian-in-chief. We are going to elect and continually elect a commander-in-chief. And no matter if you're Republican or Democrat or independent, that is the test. That's what the Constitution of the United States talks about, the president as commander-in-chief. A lot of presidents have shared my theology and were not so great on policy. And for that reason alone, and my own personal experiences seeing that, I would be very cautious about rendering a vote just because someone has my theological views, even if they mean it sincerely.